All right. Again, I'm going to go slow through this top here just to make sure that we have everybody signed on. But I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Katie DeMayo. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to learn more about the Soquel Drive Buffered Bike Lane and Congestion Mitigation Project. Before we begin tonight's program, I just want to go over some very simple meeting logistics with you all. As you see, when you join the meeting tonight, all of you guys have been muted. This will help kind of mitigate any background noise at this time. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we ask for you to put them in the chat box. The chat box is below in your Zoom tools. Please put questions throughout the meeting. At the end of the presentation, we are going to have a session for a question and answer. We've left a lot of time to be able to go through all of the questions. Any questions that we do not get to tonight or do not have any answers for tonight, we will be sure to include those on our website in our project summary, as well as a recording of tonight's meeting. To find our project website, you'll see that we'll put it right here in our chat box. It is www.soqueldrivebufferedproject.com. So I do encourage you to check out our project website after this meeting. Wonderful. I'm going to move on to our agenda. Tonight, we have a very simple agenda for you all. We're going to go through some brief welcomes and introductions. We're going to go through some existing conditions, goals, and budget for the project, as well as a project overview, a schedule. Again, as I mentioned, we'll have a lot of time for a question and answer session, and we'll end with a way for you guys to stay informed and wrap up moving into the next stages. So now I'd like to introduce who's on our project team. They'll be able to wave and acknowledge themselves as I introduce them. We have Russell Chen with Santa Cruz County. We have Tim Nguyen from Santa Cruz County. We have Steve Weisner, also with Santa Cruz County. Jason Hoppin and Amanda Rotella, both from Santa Cruz County. We have Sean O'Keefe and Dan Bloomquist with Mark Thomas. And as I mentioned myself, my name is Katie DeMayo, and my colleague Kayla Nick Kearney is with AIM Consulting. I'm so honored tonight to welcome our next guest. We have Supervisor Zach Friend from the 2nd District to give us some welcoming remarks. Zach?
Thank you, Katie. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about these remarkable possibilities that we have, not just along the Soquel corridor, although that's the focus of tonight, but this overall project funding, the congested corridors funding, is the largest investment in transportation equity and safety in our community's history. It's a pretty significant investment from the state of over $100 million, but focusing back on the Soquel area, the Soquel corridor, a lot of the projects that I've heard people request over the last 9 or 10 years that I've been on the board of supervisors are going to be addressed through this funding, including bike and pedestrian safety around Mar Vista Elementary, bike and pedestrian safety around Willowbrook Park, significant bike improvements and ADA improvements throughout that entire corridor. And I think that when you hear about the project tonight, I'm excited to have you hear about the project tonight. You'll be very pleased about these investments throughout this area. And it carries on well beyond our district up to the 1st District towards the city of Santa Cruz. But I'm going to turn it over now to Russell Chen, who's the senior civil engineer for Department of Public Works and also a real leader in the Aptos area of handling all the public works projects and is one of the leads on this project. But I just want you to know that the real takeaway here is that this is a pretty significant investment in transportation improvements in our area. And this is a large part of it, but not the only part. That also includes bike and ped overpasses on the highway and some highway improvements themselves. And so feel free to ask questions. We'd love to hear your feedback on this. And please help us get the word out about these improvements that are coming down the pike. Russell?
Thank you, Supervisor Friend. I'm excited about this project because it includes enhancements for different modes of travel. We'll provide more detail on the project overview. I'm going to go over the existing conditions. This project is on Soquel Avenue, Soquel Drive, and it goes from La Fonda to State Park Drive. It's about 5.6 miles in one direction. There's a 4-lane roadway with center turn lanes. It has high volumes. As you know, when Highway 1 is congested, traffic spills onto Soquel Drive. Sometimes we refer to it as Highway 2. We also have high speeds despite a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. We have transit delays due to congestion. We have existing sidewalk gaps and ADA ramps that were built to previous standards. Those are general existing conditions on Soquel Avenue and Soquel Drive. Now I'll go into the project goals. Next slide, please. One of our goals is safety. And one of the safety goals is bicycle safety. Santa Cruz County ranks near the top for California counties for the highest number of bike crashes. Something we're not proud of, but this project will help. We also want to reduce traffic congestion, which will increase corridor throughput, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve emergency response times, improve access to housing, jobs, schools, and medical facilities. We also want to improve active transportation connectivity and promote sustainable development. Next slide, please. Some background information. This project is part of the Watsonville to Santa Cruz Multimodal Corridor Program that came out of the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission's, also known as the RTC's, Unified Corridor Investment Study. The study identified multimodal transportation projects on Highway 1, Soquel Avenue, Soquel Drive, and Freedom Boulevard, and the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line. The projects identified will provide the greatest benefit to the community. The Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation also had extensive community outreach in developing this study. The county partnered with the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission on the Watsonville to Santa Cruz Multimodal Corridor Program and received the Solutions for Congested Corridors grant. The grant amount was for $16.5 million. The county's matching funds were $3.5 million for a total funding of $20 million. Construction estimate is about $20.5 million. There's a shortfall of about $500,000. So we're seeking additional funding, and also we'll be doing some value engineering, and we'll be doing some value engineering on that also. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Sean O'Keefe, who will present the project overview. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Russell. As you can see, and Russell mentioned previously, this is a little bit more detailed map that the project spans on the west side of La Fauna and then comes all the way over to State Park on the east. It's important to note, just as a general project overview, that this project is not proposing any widening along the corridor, and that all of these improvements are happening within the existing curb line. So it's really a reallocation of space within the existing facilities. While we are adding some sidewalks, gap closures to increase the network connectivity, just wanted to kind of set that stage as, we're not proposing widening to accommodate this facilities, of more a reimagining of what we can do within the existing space and the conditions that we have out there in the field. Next slide. Some of the project features that we have on the corridor, starting with the bike improvements, are focused around Class 4 and Class 2 bike lanes. There's an existing Class 2 network out there today, but as a part of the study, it was identified as wanting to enhance that to a Class 4. You can see in the picture on the right, a Class 4 facility is defined as a facility with a buffer, in our case 2 feet, with a vertical raised delineators along the corridor. So as Russell mentioned, just over 5 miles in one direction. In this case, we're able to get 5 miles of Class 4 as well as 5 miles of Class 2 for a total of 10 miles along the corridor. So our original plan, we actually had less Class 4, and we've been working with the Bicycle Advisory Committee and others to continue to refine our design. And we've actually identified a few locations as well where we think we can even enhance this a little bit more and add more Class 4 corridor to the corridor as well as we move forward. So our goal is to put as much Class 4 out there and protected bikeways as possible, but we are constrained in several locations where we're only able to put in Class 2 bike lanes and buffers at that. There are also 27 bike boxes along the corridor to enhance pedestrians or bicycle safety at the intersections. Next slide, please. Jumping over to the pedestrian improvements. As mentioned, there is sidewalk for most of the corridor. There are, though, some spots where it's a little bit more difficult, where there's some slopes that we're going to take care of and widen to accommodate, again, that increased network connectivity from a sidewalk and pedestrian perspective. In this case, just over half a mile. There's also some reconstruction that's going to be involved as part of the project. This is mainly focused adjacent to Harbor High, and I'll get to more of that details and some of the other project's specific features. There's also obviously lots of ramps along the corridor, but we're actually reconstructing 94 of them. So ramps have been improved over time, and our assessment and analysis as a part of our design has identified another 94 that need to be upgraded to current standard. 70 crosswalk upgrades. Those include enhanced striping for visibility for pedestrians and bicycles and motorists as they cross the corridor. And also 10 mid-block crosswalks and RRFBs. And what that is, you can see here is a rectangular rabbit flashing beacon, and we have a picture of that on the right-hand side. There's actually 6 existing current existing mid-block crossings and 1 existing flashing beacon crossing along the corridor. In this case, we're actually upgrading all of those existing crossings with these new RRFBs, as well as adding 3 more crossings that are mid-block crossings. Those are going to be located to coincide with the new overcrossings that we have at Chanticleer, as well as at Mar Vista. So providing that connectivity as you cross over Highway 1 with those improvement projects, as well as a new mid-block crossing adjacent to Cabrillo College. Next slide, please. Finally, talking a little more about the bus and vehicular improvements, transit signal priority will help with the travel time reliability for the transit, as well as adaptive signal control at 21 of the intersections across the corridor. So really linking those signals together to be able to maximize throughput and reduce congestion along the corridor. And finally, we have a pavement rehabilitation. In this case, it'll be a cape seal across the corridor, help protect the pavement, increase the longevity of the pavement that we have out there today, as well as provide a blank canvas for the new striping that so will really pop when the project's completed for motorists as well as cyclists and pedestrians along the corridor. Next slide, please. Here we have a typical cross-section of what we're working with out in the corridor. And again, I mentioned the reallocation of space. In this case, we'll be reducing some lane widths as well as the 2-way left turn lane where available on the corridor to accommodate those buffered class 2 as well as the class 4 facilities that you can see. On the far right side, you'll see what we have there is a little retaining wall that will be needed to accommodate those sidewalk gap closures along the corridor in those certain discrete locations. Next slide. Now I wanted to jump into a little bit more project specifics as we step through the corridor and some areas that I thought were important to highlight just to provide a more of a general understanding of what it is that we're doing. In this case, you're going to see a big change as it relates to the parking in front of Cabrillo College. The county and the team has done a great job coordinating with Cabrillo and decided that in this case, it made more sense to provide protected facilities in front of the college for the bike lane. So what you see on the top side, the top cross section here is the existing condition. And what we have on the bottom is the proposed condition where parking along the street will actually be eliminated to provide enhanced safety and separation between the vehicular travel lanes and the cyclists. Next slide, please. And the sidewalk reconstruction that we mentioned previously this is the spot that's adjacent to Harbor High. As you can see in the picture there, the retaining wall is failing in some spots. The pavement is cracked very badly and obviously not a safe spot to be if you're in a wheelchair or have access concerns through this part of the corridor. What we're going to be doing is rebuilding this section, providing new retaining walls as well as a new railing to really clean this up and make that access point much easier to traverse as folks connect to Harbor High. Next slide. Here we have another, I think, important location at 41st and Soquel. There's a network connectivity gap here as well as you look at in this case, it would be the southwest corner, completing that sidewalk connection, as well as if you look at the striping along 41st, we're going to reconfigure that to tighten it up a little bit so there's not such a wide right turn pocket at that location to hopefully slow folks down and provide enhanced safety at this intersection. Next slide, please. Another spot that we felt was important to highlight is very congested in Soquel Village. We're very constrained through this location in particular. You can see here that some of the lanes are being narrowed down actually to 10 feet to be able to provide for those new bicycle facilities through this location, as well as providing bike boxes for cyclists to be able to cross the intersections more safely. In this case, we have a standard bike box on Porter on the south leg there, as well as the 2-stage bike boxes along Soquel Drive to increase that safety and visibility for cyclists as they cross through the congested area through Soquel Village. Next slide. Finally, I wanted to highlight a typical gap closure project or the gap closure segment that we're looking at. This is very typical where we're working, but in this case, between Wisteria and Ledyard. You'll see in the picture on the upper left-hand corner, there is a bike lane there, but clearly there's a slope that we're going to have to deal with. In this case, we'll be putting in a retaining wall at that location to be able to allow for our sidewalks to be able to be implemented. In this case, as a part of this meeting, I know that there are several properties in general along the corridor that are going to be impacted as a part of these sidewalk gap closures. The county has done a great job, I think, reaching out to those individuals. And so if you have individual questions about property impacts as it relates to the sidewalk gap closures, I would suggest please continue to work with the individuals from the county that you've been in contact with. If you want to get into more specific details about the improvements that are happening in front of your specific property or at your side street, as this meeting is probably not the right forum to go into very specific details about properties in general, specific properties. We also have a unique feature here as well. There is a drainage culvert that you'll see in the second picture to your right-hand side that we're going to be taking care of with a small cantilevered structure over that to provide that sidewalk connectivity, as well as a new railing at that location as well. Another thing you'll see here is that new mid-block crossing. If you can see the top of it, it's in the middle of the screen on the bottom image, that's a new mid-block crossing at Mar Vista. So that'll allow the connectivity to the new overcrossing that's going to be over Highway 1. Next slide, please. One thing we also wanted to update and let everyone know is there will obviously be impacts as a part of construction. It's part of every construction project. In this case, the anticipated shoulder closings for the areas where we have the sidewalk gap closures that we're going to need to install, but there should not be long-term lane closures as a part of the project. Really it's those shoulder closures to allow for the construction of the sidewalks. Otherwise, everything else should be able to be completed without closing lanes for a significant period of time. So allowing for that throughput in general to be able to remain, so not increasing congestion, hopefully too much as a part of this project as it's being constructed. You will likely see some temporary lane restriping, again, in those areas where we have the sidewalk gap closure construction need to be completed, as well as there's going to be impacts and closures as it relates to some side streets and driveway access while we're doing the demolition, creating the formwork, pouring the concrete, letting the concrete cure, again, in those locations that'll be affected by the new sidewalk gap closures and the increase in connectivity. In those locations as well, we can probably anticipate some intermittent service utility or utility service interruptions for water and power. There's going to need to be adjustment of boxes, as well as a couple of poles that will be needed relocated along the project. But we are focused on maintaining that bicycle and pedestrian access throughout the corridor, especially in those locations where we are going to be rebuilding the curb ramps to having a secondary access or at least a way to get around at the intersections so that we're not impeding access for bicycles and pedestrians as well. Our anticipated construction duration is approximately 12 to 18 months. We're hoping it's on the shorter side, but wanted to provide, again, some flexibility. Obviously, rain days, other impacts that happen during construction are sometimes out of our control that will elongate the duration. Next slide, please. And finally, jump back. Finally, touching on the project schedule, kind of where we've been. Our preliminary engineering was completed towards the end of last year, with jumping straight into final design completion anticipated for February. It's next month. It's coming very quickly. Working very hard to get this thing out on the street for bidding, with right-of-way acquisition coming in spring of 2022. And again, all those things coming together, we anticipate start of construction in summer of 2022, with the anticipated duration being 12 to 18 months, should be completed hopefully in time for Christmas 2023 at the latest, is our current schedule as we show. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sean. It looks like we're getting some great questions in our chat box. And just to remind you, you can put your questions right in the chat box from moving forward, and we'll be able to address them now. All right, the first one is, will sidewalks be added on Mar Vista from Soquel to the new pedestrian crossing over Highway 1?
So we're not as part of this project, but we are looking at it in the future. We will be doing some plan line studies on Mar Vista to to add the sidewalks on a future project.
Wonderful. The second question is, what is a bike box?
Let me kick that over to Sean, go into more detail on that.
Yeah, no problem. If we wanted to, let's see, Dan, do we think that's better to show on a plan sheet or jump back into the presentation?
I think there's the slide in the presentation, the one through Soquel Village that shows what those look like.
Okay.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, so well, let me start with the one, and Dan, jump in when you feel the need to. So on Porter Street, the one in the middle that you see here, the southern leg, what you're seeing there is a typical bike box. And what that allows the cyclists to do is to get in front of the traffic as they're making a left turn, in this case, to head westbound on Soquel. So it provides, again, the cyclist to get ahead of the traffic and move with the signal operations. Of course, all of this can happen with crossing the street as well if they would like to, and then continue in the bike lane that way. But this is a way for those more experienced cyclists to be able to get into traffic, in this case on Porter, and make that left-hand turn safely ahead of the vehicles. As it relates to a two-stage bike box, you'll see that on the Soquel Drive portion. That is where you have, for example, if you look as we're heading to the westbound side of Porter, there's a little green box that is in front of the right-hand turn lane where a cyclist would wait. They would cross the intersection with traffic, then they would get into that bike box, they would stop, and then they would wait for the Porter signal to turn green as they would head, in this case, southbound down Porter. Hopefully that made sense. Dan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, that's the way it works.
Wonderful. I think that also answers the question, will traffic lights be sensitive to the presence of bikes in the new bike boxes?
So that is correct. They will be sensitive to that. There's video detection that we'll be using as a part of these signals. And so they will be able to pick up the cyclists as well. So there will also obviously be an opportunity to get up on the sidewalk if you're not comfortable with the bike box, to get on the sidewalk and cross in the crosswalk. There's also a PED bicycle actuated crossing as well. So again, you'll be able to have two options there for those generally more experienced folks. They'll be able to use the bike boxes. For those folks that are maybe less experienced or less comfortable, can obviously still use the crosswalks as you normally would.
Wonderful. All right, the next question is, are there protected bike intersections using islands to slow right turning traffic included in this project? And how did we value right turn lanes versus protected intersections?
So we don't have any protected bike intersections as part of this project. We're not changing the lane widths that much. We don't have that much room to play with on these intersections. Is there anything you want to add there, Sean?
No, I would say that typically protected intersections, if you're going to do them, cost more money. And in this case, we don't have the budget to be able to do that, as well as reconfiguration and moving curb lines. In a lot of cases, we're very constrained in a lot of parts of the corridor here. So to be able to, we did look at some high level concepts for protected intersections at certain locations, but due to some constraints and also budget related issues, we're not able to install at this time any protected intersections as part of the project.
All right. Okay, so the next question is parking proposed to be eliminated on Soquel Drive in Soquel Village?
No, it's not.
Great. What is the spacing on Class 4 sanctions, and are they far enough apart that bicyclists can move left if needed for making left turns?
I'll have you answer that, Sean.
Yeah, Dan, I'm not sure of the exact spacing, to be honest, between the Class 1 delineators. There is a standard there, though. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, the standard is it's 20 feet spacing where we do have the delineators. In addition to that, the delineators will be stopped in advance of the intersections where vehicles have to turn right. And also that provides space for the bicyclists who are comfortable with that maneuver to merge into the left turn pockets.
Wonderful. Is the design amenable?
So we've been working with the different committees on the design itself. And we've received inputs from the Bicycle Advisory Committee and also the Elderly and Disabled Technical Advisory Committee. So is there anything you wanted to add there, Sean?
No, I think that sums it up. We have been reaching out to the individual advisory committees to provide input on the project, and have taken those and implemented the features where we're feasible.
All right, so I can probably answer this next question, where they can find the specific engineering documents as you showed in the presentation today. A copy of this presentation will be posted along with the meeting summary to our project website within approximately 2 weeks. And it will include all of the presentation that you saw today. Specifically, where are the new crosswalks?
So we have one at Chanticleer, where the pedestrian overcrossing will be going in, and then also at Mar Vista, another pedestrian overcrossing. And then over at Cabrillo College, we have another one going in over there. I don't know if we can show where the Cabrillo College one is.
Yeah, go back to maybe the slide 6 or 7, I think it was. There you go. Oh, go back. Yep, and you can look at the legend here. The new install at existing and the new RFBs are shown in separate colors. You can see again there are currently 7 existing mid-block crossings along the corridor, and we're adding 3 new ones, as well as upgrading the existing 7 crossings with new RFBs, or the rectangular rapid flashing beacons.
All right. What are the plans for a crosswalk at Merrill and Soquel?
I'm going to kick that one over to Sean.
At Merrill and Soquel, I'm not familiar exactly with that location.
Yeah, we typically refer to it as the Willowbrook crossing, and we did look at that initially with the concepts, but did end up dropping it due to some concerns over site distance as well as the cost.
All right. Okay, so next question is, did I hear correctly that the lanes in Soquel Village area are going to be reduced in width by 10 feet? My concern is that this is already a very congested area with one of our fire stations nearby.
Yes, some areas of in Soquel Village will be reduced down to 10 feet. With some of the lanes right now are existing 10 feet already. Did you want to add anything there, Sean?
No, that's correct. That's absolutely correct. So that we're using that as our absolute minimum. In tight spots, we'll be doing down to 10 feet, especially in the Soquel Village area. But Russell, as you mentioned, there are existing lanes that are already that narrow. And so just matching existing condition, and again, trying to squeeze as much room out of that for the proposed bike facilities as we can through those locations.
All right. What are the plans to reduce speed on Soquel, especially near Cabrillo College?
We don't, as part of this project, we don't have any type of speed reduction. I don't know if, Sean, can you think of anything that, I think we're just doing mainly safety, doing some protection for the bike lanes and so forth.
Yeah, inherently, as you narrow lanes, the speeds generally come down. So that's one of the tools we have in our toolbox here.
That's true.
To be able to reduce speeds that we're going to be implementing. Again, providing what we think is an appropriate width to those lanes, but allowing for the cyclists to be able to be in the space as well, adjacent to the traveled lanes, while reducing speeds in those travel lanes. That's definitely one of the goals of the project, is to increase safety. One of the ways to do that is to slow folks down, and you do that by narrowing lanes.
Great. I got a direct message question. Are there future plans to extend the project from State Park Drive to Aptos Village and address the pedestrian bike improvements from the village along Spreckles Drive to to Rio Del Mar Flats.
Yes, there are future plans for that. And we are looking at future grant funding opportunities to be able to provide enhancements along that corridor from State Park Drive all the way to Freedom there.
All right. Would children be able to travel, mainly bike, in both directions on the same side of the street between Mar Vista Drive, pedestrian bridge, and the Mar Vista Elementary, so that they don't have to cross over at Soquel?
So that was for cycling, is that correct?
Yes, for kids on bikes going to and from the elementary school.
Yeah, we don't recommend that in the bike lane, go in the opposite direction. They're gonna have to cross the highway there to use the bike lanes.
All right. On our project overview chart where proposed bike routes are shown, does this legend apply to both directions on Soquel Ave?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one.
Yeah.
Generally, yes, in the areas where we're showing the class 4. However, in the areas that are yellow, there are opportunities that we're investigating right now as updating the design where we might be able to provide some class 4 in one direction or the other. And generally in those areas, if it's like in a hilly area, we're trying to favor doing class 4 in the uphill directions.
Gotcha. Have we received any feedback from the fire district yet? I know we had talked about some of the stakeholders we were reaching out to.
Yeah, I don't believe we have yet for the fire district. That's a good comment.
Okay, great. And are there plans outside of this project to install a signal light at Chancellor Soquel? Is this a difficult turn? This is a difficult turn in a car, much less a bike coming off of a new overpass. This might be a comment for future plans.
Not part of this project. It's not, there's no signal involved, but we will take a look at it as a future project, especially with the Chanticleer overcrossing coming in there.
All right. We have a question. Will the project start at the west and progress east or vice versa?
Yeah, I don't, that hasn't been determined. That'll be, we'll have to work that out with whoever the contractor is that's working on the project. It's typically determined partly by the contractor and us in determining which direction the project will start and finish from. Did you want to add anything there, John?
Yeah, so it's really important for us to work closely with the contractor once they're on board, because we want to make sure that they're able to do their work as efficiently as possible. So it's really, we rely on them to tell us where they can gain efficiencies, and whether that's starting on one end and working all the way through to the other, or whether it's starting in the middle. We really want to work with them, and Russell's right. It's a back and forth to what makes sense from the traffic perspective and the community impact, but also providing those opportunities for efficiencies for the contractor to be able to complete the work as quickly as possible.
Wonderful. And it also looks like we have a representative from the fire district on tonight's meeting. So it looks like Mike has put a comment in it, and Russell and Tim, it might be great for you guys to connect with Mike after the meeting here.
That'd be great.
Wonderful. All right. It looks like we've gone through all of the questions in the chat box. I would encourage, we do have plenty of time left in the meeting here tonight. So if there's any other questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat box now. Again, we really appreciate your participation here tonight. These questions have been fantastic. And our hope is it's just the beginning of talking to you guys about this project. Again, I'm going to put in the chat box the website as well, so that you guys can visit the website after. And Kayla, can we go to that last slide where we can put up the contact information? All right, we've got another question. Was there any consideration for closing a traffic lane to gain more width or reserve as a transit lane?
No, there wasn't consideration of closing a traffic lane. We felt that the amount of traffic on Soquel Drive didn't allow us to reduce the traffic lanes, the number of traffic lanes.
Wonderful. All right, so you can see on the slide here, and I'll get right back to those questions, but you'll see on the slide here, we do have our contact information for Amanda Rotella at the county. She has her direct email here, as well as our project website. Any future engagement opportunities will also be on our website as well. And for right now, it looks like those are all the questions that we might have. We can keep this open for a few more minutes in case anybody has any other questions. But again, I just want to thank you guys all again for your participation here tonight, to tell you to visit our website for more information and updates on this project. And as I said in the beginning of this meeting has been recorded. We will post a summary with the presentation as well as a recording of this meeting on the website in approximately about 2 weeks. And so again, thank you guys so much for your participation here tonight. And if you need anything else, please feel free to reach out. One last question is, I got a direct message of any conflicts or barriers continue. Do we anticipate any conflicts or barriers? I think we went through on some of the construction barriers. Kayla, can you go back to that screen just really quickly so we can show Susan? I got a little direct message. These are some of the considerations of what we anticipate some of the construction issues might come up. Wonderful. And with that, I will close out this meeting and again say thank you guys so much. And we really, really appreciate all of your help tonight.